Mr. Mayor, you're now live.
Okay, quorum being present, I'd like to call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is a resolution to close the meeting to the public. We have a recommendation that council close the meeting at 4 p.m. to the public on the basis of the following section of the community charter, section 91B. Could I get a mover of the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Finley, seconded by Councillor Stash. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We'll now close the meeting. And
Mr. Mayor, you are now live.
Good afternoon, everyone. Before we resume our meeting that we started at 4 p.m., I'd like to start by acknowledging we're gathered here today on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. Next item on the agenda is approval of the consent agenda. I'll ask council if there are any items you'd like to remove for discussion under new business. I'm going to suggest to council that we remove item 4.2.2 for discussion under new business. Could I get a motion to the council approve the consent agenda and recommendations contained therein, with the exception of 4.2.2? Moved by Councillor Justice, seconded by Councillor Toporowski. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We now move on to approval of the regular agenda, and we have a recommendation the council adopt the agenda as circulated. Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Manhouse, seconded by Councillor Finley. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move on to my mayor's report. So a couple weeks ago, I joined North Cowichan Councillors Callio, Justice, and Manhouse, and more than 1,000 other elected officials from across the country for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference at the Metro Convention Centre in Toronto. This is a great opportunity to connect with other mayors and councillors from across the country, including from smaller rural communities and large urban centres, and discuss the common challenges that we're all facing, from the toxic drug crisis to more frequent and extreme weather events, and also attend various workshops and panel discussions with experts to learn more about potential solutions to these worsening problems. I want to thank the City of Toronto staff who provided us with tours of various initiatives underway in their municipality, including some of their mid-rise building developments, and also the multi-billion-dollar revitalization of their downtown waterfront. We also had a chance to hear from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the Deputy Conservative Leader Melissa Lantsman, NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh, and Green Party Leader Elizabeth May. And from my perspective, it was just a real privilege to join my colleagues in representing North Cowichan at this annual conference, and I look forward to seeing action from the senior levels of government on the critical issues affecting municipalities across this country, from tackling the housing crisis to addressing homelessness, to replacing our aging infrastructure and building more resilience to climate change, all of which were identified as major priorities by all the delegates in attendance there. I would like to take a moment, though, just to offer my colleagues here on the table, if they'd like to offer any thoughts about their experience attending the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Convention. Not to put you on the spot, I'll start with you, Councillor Manhouse.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the first FCM I've ever been to, and I found it very, very informative and thought-provoking, and it's a good learning experience. The one I thought was the most important to me was the opioid crisis. We're feeling the same thing here, especially during since decriminalization, and other municipalities and cities around and from BC are feeling the same thing. They're having the same issues as we are. So I was glad to have those discussions with those other municipalities and cities as to how they're moving forward with this crisis.
Thank you, Councillor Manhouse. Councillor Justice and Councillor Callio, not to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to.
But you are.
Yeah, but I am.
I just think to say that it was an honor to represent the community in Toronto and get to meet all the delegates from all over the country and to see different views from the West Coast to the East Coast, North and South, and we got to join in with other councillors into sessions that were, in my opinion, truly informative I went to the same session as Mr. Councillor Manhas, and I found that was very informative at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callio. All right. So, can you, with my update, last week North Couch and Councillor Toporowski and I were invited to join the Island Elders Luncheon hosted by Cowichan Tribes at the CM Leland Gymnasium. I want to thank our friend and Cowichan Elder Ed Elliott for welcoming us to this event and inviting us to say a few words on behalf of the municipality to all those in attendance. It was a pleasure to meet and share excellent food with the elders from Cowichan Tribes and other First Nations from across Vancouver Island. And the various volunteers who prepared the meals for this event did a tremendous job. Last week, Councillor Toporowski and I also joined the land cleansing ceremony organized by the Shaker Church and the leadership from Cowichan Tribes. And I'd like to turn it over to Councillor Toporowski to say a few words about this event that we attended.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mayor and I were invited at the Elders Luncheon to go and participating in this land cleansing. And it was Elders' vision of Nancy James who wanted to have us come together. She was quite pleasantly surprised to see that we were able to make it, and we had mentioned that an elder had invited us to come and let us know about her vision of what she wanted to do. So there was different spots in the area where she felt that she wanted to pay attention to, and she worked with the OPS staff and finding out about friends and relatives that she has lost to drugs or alcohol, and just to have those spirits move on to and not be lost. So that was the purpose of that. And so yeah, we arrived ahead of time, and there was a few people gathering around wondering what was happening, and we didn't take any pictures, but I did see some on Facebook, just out of respect of the people that were doing the prayers and whatnot. So she just wanted to say that we should be breaking down barriers at all levels, everywhere, because we're all connected in some way. And we have to find a solution to what is happening, but we have to do it by working together and facing these difficult discussions that we're going to be having in the future. And as I mentioned to her, that Mayor and I and our council here had gone for a tour, have been getting emails and people reaching out to us either by phone or on the street about how this is exploding and touching everybody. I'm sure one of us in this room have had, something happen. And so she just wanted to share that out of the compassion of her heart. And she just wanted to do her part. And it reminded me of the hummingbird story. So, but that will be for another day. But I mean, it's just, in long story short, is the hummingbird was trying to put out a fire by going into the lake and taking the water into the forest that was burning. And the other animals were like, "What are you doing?" And the hummingbird kind of, just said, "I'm doing my part." So, and it's just that, showing that you can do something. It may not look like a lot, but I think it's a start of having those difficult discussions that we will be having at this table one day. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Toporowski. I'll conclude my mayor's report by mentioning, as council knows, and to share this with the public, as has been discussed at this table and in today as well. We're facing growing challenges in our community related to homelessness and the drug crisis and street disorder. And despite our efforts, we are seeing these problems seem to be in many ways getting worse. I know that since becoming mayor almost 8 months ago, these have been the top issues that I'm responding to on a daily basis from parents, from business owners, from service providers, local residents. On our next meeting on June 21st, our next council meeting, council is planning to hold a workshop for council members to discuss how we want to approach some of these growing challenges. The idea with this workshop, it's going to provide us with a chance to comprehensively explore the various approaches to dealing with these issues, the implications of each, whether through new bylaws, increasing staffing, private security, RCB patrols, or advocacy to the province for health services. And implementing any of these solutions will be complex, likely costly, require partnerships with other jurisdictions, and council's really going to have to balance, consider that balance between enforcement on the one hand, and again, the advocacy for health services. So that's coming up on, again, on June 21st. And that concludes my mayor's report. So moving on now, public input on agenda items. So we allow up to 5 speakers, minimum of 3 minutes each. And members of the public are invited to sign up in advance. So I do have a sign-up sheet here. We do provide an opportunity as well for virtual participation. So what I'm going to do is we'll start off with those who have signed up here, and then I'm going to turn over to IT staff to walk through how participants can offer their input virtually. I noticed there are a number of speakers here signed up to speak to agenda item 11.1. You're free to speak to agenda item 11.1. It is on the agenda. I just would remind you that council isn't actually discussing the notice of motion in this meeting. My colleague, Councillor Manas, is giving notice that he wants to bring forward this notice of motion. Council wouldn't actually be discussing it until the next meeting. So again, you're free to offer your perspective on this agenda item today, but we're not actually debating it as a council until 2 weeks' time. So on that note, I'll invite Joseph Enlow to come up to the lectern. And Mr. Enslow, if you could, just state your name and your address.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, Joseph Enslow here. I live on Lane Road. Thank you. I am speaking on 11.1 on behalf of COPE, which is the Citizens Oversight and Accountability Project. I understand we're not debating it today. I'm just here to voice my support of it. I understand that back in February, I believe the province had stated there's about $1 billion coming up for some support of initiatives like this for things like mental health support and addiction treatment. I know that 600 million of that, though, is already slated for treatment beds, and then about 200 million is going to capital investments, leaving about 200 million left over that I assume maybe we could lobby for some funds for support or help and things like that. I know that in the coming months, it's going to be crucial that we plan how we address issues like this. I had the opportunity to talk to some business owners down along the strip, like on York and then the Trans-Canada, going towards like Experience Cycling and Domino's and that area there. I think a few major concerns, I hope, that are discussed when it comes up is that a lot of business owners there own the buildings and then lease the individual office spaces to business owners that are pretty concerned about what's happening, and a lot of them are considering not renewing leases and moving their businesses elsewhere, which then also leaves the building owner wondering if somebody else will actually want to lease the space. So that really leaves that entire area at a bit of a risk for, are we going to start losing business owners or businesses, which I hope that we don't. Really, I guess my main thing I wanted to kind of bring across is that we're in year, I think it's 4, after declaring the climate emergency, which brought in the climate lens. And I know that council's done a lot to make climate lens the #1 priority. And a lot of things that we are doing kind of fall under that, where it's the OCP or the transportation plan or anything like that sort of falls underneath of the climate lens. So by declaring the climate emergency, we very much made climate our number one concern, even if the actual effects of whatever that you might believe is happening for climate change, we don't necessarily see here. It's not necessarily happening here. For example, we don't have like coal power or anything like that. We're generally clean in North Cowichan, and yet we've stated our number one concern is climate. I'd just like to remind everybody that we are only minutes away from walking over to York or Beverly or Alexander or Dingwall or any of those areas, and we can see the tragic effects there. A few stories I personally have, I witnessed a fellow get attacked by a hatchet and then actually waited, and I took cell phone footage of it. The cops showed up. It was a big ordeal with all the gore that you could imagine that would happen with it. I actually ended up going to court as a witness for that and had to sit across from the assailant who just mad dogs stared me down. And obviously I'm a pretty big guy. I'm not a very easily intimidated person, but to know that if you do want to speak up and you sit across from someone who's willing to take an axe to somebody, to stand there and to testify against them while that person stares you in the face is a pretty intimidating situation. So I can imagine why a lot of business owners and residents and families don't want to deal with that. That's very likely why, if you haven't heard yet, Cowichan Middle School will likely be a closed campus next year because they really can't have students out. It's too dangerous for them. So in conclusion for it, I would just ask council to please consider putting the same amount of priority and precedence that we are for things such as the climate lens emergency. Please know that these things are happening in our town right now, and I hope that they're not getting worse. So please, when you do discuss this, put a high level of priority to it, please. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next speaker we have is Adriana Richards. Ms. Richards, if you could state your name and address.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's Adriana from North Cowichan speaking on behalf of the members of COPE. This is a very important topic to my heart, though. I've spoken before to you all about how open drug use has affected my child in a PTSD type of way. My son went from a boy who would always ask me for change to give a person he may see on the side of the road to a young man who sees people across from his school with their pants down and a needle in their arm as normal. I wish I could share with you the pictures my son takes almost daily and shares with me of what he sees, and maybe I will for you who do not live in the area nor have kids in the school. The stories by our members are similar, so we took to the streets with our petition and supported the bylaw to actually speak to the children of Cowichan Council School. Every child who was asked whether they would support the bylaw gave an enthusiastic yes. When I was at Beverly Roundabout during a Cowichan lunch break this last week, there was no bylaw, no RCMP, and no footprint security. I asked the supervisors what protocol is if they sense danger to themselves or their children. They said, we tell security and they call police. I asked, where is security? To which they replied, exactly. Most days, not one security branch is here. As the situation worsens, possibly these resources are taken up elsewhere, but to the detriment of the children. There was 2 folks that day smoking crack that the kids had to walk past and through the actual smoke. And another man was so high in the middle of the road when he walked towards me, even I was quite scared. Last night at the school board meeting, they discussed making Cowichan a closed campus for safety. I asked, how much longer are we going to allow this open drug use to take over our streets and now take the enjoyment from the kids at lunch because the province decided to place this facility in the middle of 4 schools? You must feel helpless in many ways as the province just swoops in and causes chaos in your town without needing council approval. It'll only get worse as the next transition house opens in Duncan. This is 100% a build it and they will come initiative. COPE has hit the streets and talked to many people from Sharp's cleanup crews to homeless to volunteers who watch the kids. And they have all stated emphatically the growing number of people who are more violent as well are not from Duncan. They're even shipped over from East Vancouver. What can our community do? I feel so helpless as I watch my neighborhood gets worse by the day. Passing a bylaw against open drug use is the least we can do to start, and to help empower local law enforcement. I understand the province is dangling $1 billion of mental health and addiction money in all the city's faces, and COPE will work to help advocate for that money if council feels that's something needed. The worry is it's the province who caused the slow destruction of our town, so how will they now do better? Do they have any new ideas that have not worked yet? I feel this should not even end up being a debate. North Cowichan has some pretty silly bylaws on the books currently, and this one should be a no-brainer. COPE and its members support furthering this discussion to the next phase. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker we have is Sheila Paul. Ms. Paul.
Can I just speak on it? There's horrible traffic, like she was caught in it, and I asked if she could be put to the end. Is that, I don't know if there's more speakers?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'll go through the next two and then
Just about, like,
I'll go through the next two speakers and I'll come back to Ms. Paul.
thank you.
So next I have is Chris Weber. Mr. Weber, if you could, Ms. Weber, if you could state your address, and then I didn't get the agenda item you wanted to speak to here.
Apologies, actually, I'm Rachel Sansom. Mr. Weber and I are speaking to
Okay.
the same thing, and so I do have something prepared, so I will go ahead if I may. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Rachel Sansom of 1498 White Pine Terrace in Victoria. I'd like to speak to agenda item 10.1 regarding a setback variance for 8100 Bertha Street for a storage shed and deck enclosure, and I'm representing the Weber family today. So we're respectfully requesting that Council consider approving this variance for the following reasons. The owners are happy to make the required changes to the buildings to provide the appropriate fire-rated assembly in accordance with the BC Building Code. The directly impacted neighbor to the south at 8096 Bertha Street has no objection to the buildings in their current location and will access through her property to perform the required improvements to bring these buildings to code. Rebuilding and moving these structures to the required setbacks, the storage shed is only 10 inches too close to the property line, and the 2'6" to the storage room deck enclosure will be expensive. We've received quotes in the order of $10,000 range to do this work. This will be excessive for a young family. The shed is on a foundation. It was apparently built at the same time as the house itself in the 1990s and will be really difficult to move. In fact, it actually matches the house in the same stucco and roof. It's been there again since the house was built. And this removal of the storage shed and hot tub enclosure will result in a reduction of, again, more storage for the family and enjoyment and privacy in their backyard. We understand that this particular variance was brought about by a bylaw complaint. The current neighbors do not object to this variance. The owners did canvass their neighbors and have not heard anything untoward. The required improvements will improve the look of the buildings while providing the required fire safety assembly. We'd also request that should you prefer one variance over the other, that perhaps you prefer to let the shed stay where it is, only because it's very difficult to move and, again, expensive. And again, it's only 10 inches out of whack with regard to the property line. Thank you very much. We're here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. I don't see Ms. Paul here, so I'm going to move on now to the virtual attendees, and I'll ask IT staff if you can just walk us through the process for those who want to participate virtually.
There are 3 ways to join the speakers list. On the desktop or web, you can click the raise hand button. On the mobile app, press the 3 dots, then raise hand. By telephone, press the *3 to raise or lower hand.
I'll turn to staff. I don't see any attendees with their hands raised.
Mr. Mayor, there is not.
All right. Again, I don't see Ms. Paul here, so we're going to move on past public input over to bylaws. Our first bylaw, item 9.1, zoning amendment bylaw number 3910 for first and second readings. Over to you, Ms. Martineau.
Okay. Zoning amendment bylaw number 3910 is before council for first and second readings. The bylaw proposes to reclassify the Crofton Child Care Center located at 8025 Barrage Street and the adjacent roads from rural residential zone to the public use zone. The recommendation is that council, 1, give first and second readings to zoning amendment bylaw number 3910, 2023, and 2, authorize a public hearing for zoning amendment bylaw number 3910, 2023, and notification in accordance with the Local Government Act.
Moved by Councillor Finley, seconded by Councillor Justice. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We now move on to item 9.2. Back to you, Ms. Martineau.
Okay, so zoning amendment bylaw number 3911 is before council for first and second readings. The bylaw proposes to add a new subsection under section 55.4 of zoning bylaw number 2950 to permit a maximum of 2 residential buildings on the property located at 1211 Barnes Road. The recommendation is that council, 1, consider zoning amendment application ZB 000189 to permit a 106 square meter detached accessory dwelling unit at 1211 Barnes Road, despite section 3A of council's secondary dwelling rural lands policy, that the size of the proposed second dwelling be restricted to 90 square meters or less of gross floor area, and make an exception in this circumstance due to the age of the building, and that an alteration to the dwelling to comply with the policy would alter the integrity of the structure. 2, give first and second readings to zoning amendment bylaw number 3911, 2023, to permit a detached accessory dwelling unit with a maximum gross floor area of 106 square meters at 1211 Barnes Road. And 3, authorize a public hearing for zoning amendment bylaw number 3911, 2023, and notification in accordance with the Local Government Act.
Great, thank you, Ms. Martineau. Do we have a mover? Move the recommendation. Seconder? I understand both Mr. Morris and the applicant are available to answer any questions. Any questions for staff or the applicant? No? All right, we'll call the question then. All in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. Back to you, Ms. Martineau, for item 9.3.
Okay, so zoning amendment bylaw number 3912 is before council for first and second readings. The bylaw proposes to add a new subsection under section 53(4)E of zoning bylaw number 2950 to permit a maximum of 2 residential dwellings on the property located at 7325 Osborne Bay Road. However, the recommendation for this one is that council deny zoning amendment application ZB 000182 to permit a detached accessory dwelling, residential dwelling at 7325 Osborne Bay Road.
Recommendation from staff is moved by Councilor Toporowski. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Justice. Any discussion? And I'll just note for council, both Mr. Morris and the applicant are available to answer any questions. No discussion? No? Councilor Finlay?
I'm against the recommendation, Mr. Mayor. I think doing what we can to help keep this this property in the family, I believe, was the letter of rationale, is the right thing to do here. And it's a slight amendment as far as the size of the property going from 1 hectare to 0.9. So I will be against the recommendation.
Great, thanks, Councilor Finlay. Any further discussion? Councilor Manhas?
Yeah, like Councillor Finley will be opposing the recommendation by staff. The property is already serviced by well water and septic, and I just think it's for a secondary dwelling that I think it just makes sense to do it. We need housing, we need affordable housing, and it's going to stay in the family, as Councillor Finley had said. So I will be voting against the recommendation.
Great, thanks, Councilor Manhas. There'll be no further discussion. I'll call the Councilor Toporowski.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just trying to find something within this report. If it was denied, they're saying that they could, is this the one that you can build a duplex? So that was my question on that report.
I'll turn to staff, Mr. Morris or Mr. Conway, perhaps.
That's correct. You can, in fact, build a duplex.
Oh, thanks. Sorry, I thought I muted myself. But so my question is, the 2 dwelling unit. They would still, a duplex is 2 dwelling unit, right?
A duplex, yes, we would consider that as a 2-family dwelling. The difference in this case is the applicant is asking for the second dwelling to be detached.
All right, any further, Councillor Justice?
Yeah, I just want to say that these these policies do have a logic, and in this case, the 1 hectare minimum lot size is where there's no municipal sewer or water exists, because there's not considered to be enough room on the lot to have both a water source and a septic system. Is that correct?
You know, each situation is unique, so I think in some cases that can be true. You can run out of room in a lot, given suitable areas for siting a well or septic field, given the terrain or the type of material. In general, this 1 hectare lot size is derived from health standards.
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, so the letter of rationale says that the proposed detached suite will have shared water and its own sewer system, and I'm just wondering what we know about the source of the water, and where it would be in relationship to the new and existing septic system. I mean, the schematic in the report indicates there's a cistern where the proposed new building will be, but it also says that the cistern will be moved. So, I mean, are you able to tell us a little bit about that? It's a hill property, right? And so it's a little bit more complex than
Well, I'm not entirely sure where the well is located on the property. I do know it is serviced by a well. I did go out to the property and have a look, and it does have some gradient to it as it climbs up off Osborne Bay Road to the east. There's a bit of a flatter area or level spot at the top where they propose to put in the second dwelling. Currently, there's a very large cistern there, and it was intended to be used for some farming purposes up there, growing some plants. So it's a bit of a remnant. I think they're planning on utilizing that and incorporating it into the property at a future date too, rather than getting rid of it.
Thank you.
Councillor Manas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Morris, will the current well water and the septic system have the capacity for a second dwelling?
Well, the septic system can be sized in accordance to meet needs for housing through the building permit process. As for the capacity of the well, I don't know the answer to that question, how much water is available for them.
Okay, so how can we, how can we deny this if we don't know the capacity for a second dwelling?
All right, any further discussion? Are you ready for the question? So we have a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. The staff recommendation. I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillors Finley, Callio, Eustache, and Manhas opposed. The motion's defeated. Would someone like to propose an alternative motion? Yeah, Councillor Manhas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a recommendation that we accept zoning amendment, move forward with the zoning amendment applications ZB 000182 to permit a detached accessory residential dwelling at 7325 Osborne Bay Road.
Hey, Councillor Manas, could I suggest basically what you said, except the wording in the staff report for the alternative option? It's the bottom of page 46. So could I take that as what you're moving? All right. Seconded by Councillor Finley. Any discussion? No discussion? I'll call the question then. All in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. We now move on to reports. The first report is 10.1. I believe I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 10.1 is a development variance permit application for 8100 Bertha Street. And the purpose is to consider development variance permit application to reduce the minimum side yard setback for a hot tub enclosure and storage room from 1 meter to 0.24 meters and a storage shed from 1 meter to 0.73 meters for purposes of legalizing 2 existing structures at said address. Staff's recommendation, Mr. Mayor, is that council deny the development variance permit application, DVP 84, for the variances noted at 8100 Bertha Street.
Thank you, Mr. Swaby. Would someone like to recommendations moved by Councillor Manhas? Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Justice. Any discussion? No. Councillor Finlay.
Once again, I'm against this staff recommendation, deny the development variance permit. I think as the speaker spoke just earlier about it, it's not a big distance. It was a bylaw infraction, if I believe, or bylaw issue, but it wasn't from the neighboring properties. So I don't see the downside of denying, or don't see the upside of denying this development variance permit, sorry, when it's going to cause significant cost to the owners.
Thank you, Councillor Finlay. I've got Councillor Justice and Councillor Manhas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did get some information in the public input that I would consider to be new information, at least it was new to me, with respect to the relative costs of doing the mitigation versus moving these structures. I wonder whether our staff could comment on whether any of that new information would change their view on this.
Mr. Swaby.
Mr. Mayor, our staff's view on this is that it's not really related to the mitigation. It's related to the fact that the deterrent of building without a permit is our position should be denied. There's enough room on the property to relocate or rebuild the facilities on other parts of the properties in conformance with the bylaws. This was a complaint. Don't know who the complaint was from myself. However, the issue of mitigation to us doesn't change our position. Certainly can be something council considers, absolutely.
Okay, Councillor Justice, a follow-up, and then over to Councillor Manhas.
Yeah, thank you. I wonder if staff could comment on how the concept of legally non-conforming or grandparenting might fit in here. Were these structures built after the setbacks were encoded in the zoning of the property?
Mr. Conway.
The setback requirements were in place when the structures were built, so they were built in non-compliance with the zoning requirements, and that's one of the consequences of building without a building permit is if the siting isn't correct, then it becomes difficult to legalize it after the fact, and that's what's happened here. Variance processes are really helpful for situations. I think the primary intention is they're there for situations where it's difficult for the property owner to comply with the regulations. So if it's an odd-shaped lot or there's a constraint with the lot where it's difficult to comply, there is that process for council to relax the requirement. In this situation, there did not seem to be any rationale that way to justify the relaxation other than the structures were built without permits and in the wrong location. So that's a difficult situation for staff to recommend in favor of.
Okay, one more follow-up, then over to Councillor Manhas.
Thank you. So the letter from the applicant's agent says that that due to sales deadlines, an agreement was reached between the former and new owners to proceed with the variance permit. I took this to mean that the current owner was aware of the non-conforming structures at the time of the purchase. Would you say that's accurate?
Okay, it's probably better for the applicant to respond to that question. I read it the same way as you did, Councillor Justice, that there was some awareness, but apparently not.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Manhas and Councillor Stash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I was confused when I moved this recommendation because I was gonna vote against this recommendation, so I support this variance permit application. The cost structure as in public input we heard is $10,000 to do the work. I think it's outrageous to have a new owner of a property that was not aware, as we know now, was not aware of this violation. And also, it's only, as we heard earlier in public input, it's only 10 inches out of whack. So I will be voting against the recommendation that I moved. I moved inadvertently. Thanks.
Councillor Manhas, Councillor Stash.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the Councillor Justice's line of questions helped answer one of my questions, was that, is this a subsequent homeowner that's dealing with previous actions? So it looks like this is the case. And then now hearing that it was bought during the time of victim of our housing crisis, and the reason why now there's provincial regulations for is what they're calling it, I believe, the cooling off period, so homeowners don't get caught in this. I just, in light of that, I wanted the clarity on where it says in here that the required alterations, and I think if that was our public speaker spoke, that they could stay where they are, but there are some alterations that improve safety and would meet BC building code, but just then would be just the 10 inches that Councillor Manhas said. So can I just get clarity on staff, so what would be involved for the existing structures? And then the building permits, so we could deal with that so that we can find some clarity for the homeowner, and then the building permit for the other structure, would that come back again?
Mr. Conway.
Yeah, so our building inspectors have had a look at this application and have advised that there would have to be alterations to achieve a fire rating on the side of the building that's close to the property boundary. But that does seem achievable if some of the exterior cladding is removed and fire rated materials applied to it. So that can be achieved. There would be a building permit required for that work.
You wouldn't have to move any structures?
It would not require moving the structures. It would just require removing the cladding and redoing it.
And then on the building permit side for the new structure though, like it seems like we're caught in two things here. Like now that, you know, you come to get a permit for a hot tub enclosure, but then all of a sudden you find out about the non-conforming. So now we've lumped them both in. How can we help out the homeowner with the non-conforming pieces, yet maybe look at making sure now you're coming for a building permit, you need to do it right for the building permit for the structure. So it just reads like almost like if I don't go with the recommended option and I go with the other one, can we deal with them separately? I don't know if everybody understands what I'm saying there. Is like, can we look at how now the building permits have seen, like you're saying right now, you want those moved rather than just upgraded as a separate issue from the new building permit piece?
Yes, the staff recommendation is that the zoning setbacks be complied with. So there would have to be either removal of the structures or modification. So the hot tub enclosure, it's a relatively big roof structure. I'm not sure if the application is denied, if the owners would want to do the modification, but there is the possibility that that structure could be modified so that it complies with the setback. It would still need a building permit though to do that. I'm not sure if that gets at your question or not.
Yeah.
Councillor Kelly.
Okay.
Mr. Conway, do you have something else
Well,
to add?
if the question is, can the structures remain where they are with modifications, the answer to that is yes. There would have to be fire rated cladding on the wall near the property boundaries, but that, from what our building inspectors have advised, that could be done, and with the structures remaining on their present footprint.
Okay, yeah, I'm just asking, just because I know a neighbor down my street, I wasn't on council, but they were allowed last year to build right on the property line, because the neighbors said they were okay with it, and they built like right on the property line, a brand new structure. So I'm just curious here what can be done here.
Yes.
I don't know if we can call a speaker back, but again, I'm just trying to get clarity back on what was just spoken from I guess the proponent on, are we allowed to ask questions in regards to that? Because it's a significant financial implications for a homeowner that was, I'm having a little empathy here that they were forced into a rust situation. We know that people had to buy houses over cost and were forced into it, and if they put any requirements for any inspections, they were like, get out of town. So
just to be crystal clear, because I don't think I fully understood it, you can leave the building where it is if you put fire cladding on it, but you still need the variance. So either way, you need the variance.
All right, I've got Councillor Callio, then Councillor Justice.
Well, it looks to me like, when the proponent was speaking earlier, they said that the neighbors, what I got was the neighbors seemed to be okay with having the hot tub and the enclosure staying where they are. I'm in agreement with some of the other members on council here that I think it's a real, it's not good to have to force somebody who's just bought a home to have to put out $10,000 extra to move something. And as long as the safety and fireproofing can be done, I'm for moving that we pass the variance.
Right, Councillor Justice, then back to Councillor Stash.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with Councillor Callio and the Stash on this, and probably others who, really have some empathy for the homeowner situation. And yet I feel like I'm sort of in an information deficit in a way, both because of the complexity of the needing a variance in either case, but also having this sort of what I consider to be a sort of a contradiction between what's in the letter and the statement made that the owner was not aware of the non-conforming structures at the time of purchase, which I take as accurate. But I also am sort of worried about, not really knowing what the neighbor to the south that is being impacted by that incursion on the property line is feeling. So that's just where I'm sitting. I'm sort of, we could make a decision based on empathy, based on what we've heard today, which is, I guess, probably likely direction that we're going. But I'm very worried about the not having information from the direct information from the neighbor to the south.
Councillor Stash.
just to clarify on my statements, though, was just that I would be supportive of a variance on the non-conforming to allow them to stay where they are as long as they just meet safety requirements, but would be clarity on the new structure, though, because the new structure is you have full understanding that it needs to meet certain setback requirements. So can we make it so that one has to meet? Because we're trying to deal with the old structures here because that's what I'm saying is that splitting of the two, because it's not just one item. You're dealing with an old and a new. Basically, I kind of guess what you said, Councillor Justice. Can we deal with each individually? One would allow a variance for non-conforming but meeting safety requirements, and the other one needs a new building permit, but we could require that or deny the variance request on that part. Like, it's a two-part here, is it not?
So you're distinguishing between the hot tub enclosure and the storage shed?
It's asking right now to build a new structure, not an existing structure. Okay, yeah, it's just, this one's actually.
No, I think that, I'll turn to staff to clarify, but it's
Okay.
two existing structures.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. There's no new structure involved here. They're two existing structures. Yeah, that's right.
Councillor Manhas?
Yeah, that's what I was going to clarify. There's two existing structures.
existing
As it says in
structures.
the report.
Yeah. Councillor Manhas?
And what is maybe staff would know what the cost would be to fireproofing this? The estimate cost? No. Pardon me?
If I may, sorry, through the chair, $3,000 to do the fire rating as opposed to moving.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we've got the staff recommendation has been moved and seconded to deny the variance. Do we want to, Councillor Toporowski?
I just had a further question.
Sorry, I missed that.
I just had one more question.
Yeah, of course, please.
So if we denied this recommendation, and I heard from Mr. Conway that the word relaxation of the variance, does that mean this, if we denied this and okayed a different motion to accept it, that we could relax the variance, is that correct, Mr. Conway, or Ted?
Staff is recommending to deny the variance requested by the applicants. If you would like to approve the location of the buildings, you would not support this motion that's on the floor.
But then there would be a relaxation of the,
And then you would put a motion forward that the alternative motion to approve or move forward with the variances.
thank you.
Councillor Justice.
Mr. Mayor, the only thing that's sort of standing in my way of voting against this motion to deny is my worry about the not having heard from the neighbor by directly or by mail. I wonder if it would be reasonable to ask the applicant or the agent to comment on how they know the opinion of the neighbor.
Yeah, typically we wouldn't invite the applicant or the agent to come up, but if all the council's okay with it, we can make an exception. See nodding? All right.
I would just also note, Mr. Mayor, that we did notify the neighbors with this application, so they were aware of the variance coming, and we did not receive any.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the owner did speak with his neighbor to the south. She was having some issues and was unable to prepare a letter that we had requested. I don't know if there's another step to issuing the variance, but we could provide that information before that if that was acceptable. Is there another step to the variance process?
I don't believe so, but I'll turn to staff.
Yeah. Yeah, we were hoping to get something from her, but again, she was having some personal issues, so was unable to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll turn to council. Are you ready to call the question? So we've moved and seconded the staff recommendation to deny the development variance permit. So I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? And opposed? All councils opposed. Motion's defeated. Would someone like to, Councillor Stash, you want to move the alternative option?
I would, Your Worship, but just to make sure, in the wording of that motion, can we ask with respect to a letter from the neighbor, because it is their property line and the greatest fire risk? And it sounds like they're in support of that. I just, if council would be fine with that, of course, that would be needing a seconder. So my motion would be to allow the variance to exist and to meet the fire rating and BC building code requirements, subject to support from the shared property line neighbor.
Mr. Mayor, just to help out again, on page 59, there is an alternative motion that is written.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at that. Just with regards to Councillor Stash's suggestion, is that something that council could add on to the motion? I mean, I think it would be something along the lines, basically paraphrase what you said, subject to the municipality receiving a support letter from the owner of the property immediately south of the applicant.
Yeah, the shared property line that the non-variance compliance structures are, or just the shared property line.
Yeah. Councillor Mann is going to speak to it, and I'm going to turn to staff to clarify if this even is an option.
Yeah, I'm not going to second it because there's a deadline given when neighbors or anybody affected can give feedback, and that has passed and has come to our table now. So I don't think it's prudent to go back again to the neighbors at this time.
Okay, I'll turn to staff now just to clarify what our options are here. Just, Mr. Ray, we're hoping to get clarification on whether what Councillor Stash has suggested is an option or not as an amendment to the.
I'll have the corporate officer speak to that.
Over to you, Ms. Marna.
Yes, you probably, the best course of action would be to refer the matter back to staff to investigate it further and then bring it back to a subsequent meeting for decision.
I think the challenge, Mr. Mayor, is that you can't have a motion to approve subject to something happening.
Your worship, I'll go with the alternate recommendation then.
Okay, so you're moving
as
option 2
written,
in the staff
yep.
report.
Yeah, line 2.
So it's a move, seconded by Councillor Finley. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We now move on to item 10.2. Back to you, Mr. Swaby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 10.2 is also a development variance permit application for 6125 Lakeview Drive. And the purpose of this application is to consider a development variance permit application to reduce the minimum front yard setback for a principal residential dwelling from 5 meters to 4.3 meters to facilitate a future subdivision at 6125 Lakeview Drive. The recommendation from staff is that council authorize and issue the development variance permit as noted for DVP 91.
Councillor Justice, I know you had your hand up first. Did you have a question, or are you moving?
I'm happy to make the motion.
I'll
But
take
I do
that
have a
as
couple of
moving it
questions.
and a second from Councillor Finley, but as you moved it, you'll get first opportunity to speak to it.
So, yeah, I just have a couple of questions for staff. Can you explain the logic of council having to approve a development variance permit for an existing house for a setback issue was caused by the municipality expanding a road?
Yeah, it is an unusual situation, but it's really up to the owner on whether they want to legalize the dwelling, back to that legal non-conforming issue. So by granting the variance, then they can go forward and sell the property with a legal setback. And that's really what this is about.
Okay, and I guess related to that, a subdivision application on the lower half of the property have to wait until the variance permit is obtained? Is that just because you can't do a subdivision if there's any issues outstanding on the property as a whole?
I think it can go either way. The approving officer probably wrote it into the PLA as a requirement, and that's why we're here. But I've seen them work both ways, where you can get them afterwards or as part of the subdivision.
Okay, thanks, that's fine.
The discussion, are you ready for the question? Question? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We now move on to item 10.3. Back to you, Mr. Swaby.
Mr. Mayor, another development variance permit application for 2019 and 2021 Otter Close and 64, 67, 64, 69 Marine Crescent. And the purpose is to consider 2 development variance permit applications to decrease the minimum required side yard setback for 2 strata lots at 2019 and 2021 Otter Close and 64, 67, and 64, 69 Marine Crescent to facilitate the creation of separate strata lines for the existing duplexes. This is where we have existing buildings and they're creating lot lines to raise title. So they need to create the setback variance in order to achieve that. So the recommendation for number 1 is that council authorize issuance of a development variance permit number 94 and grant a variance to section 56.6A of the zoning bylaw number 2950, 1997 by reducing the minimum side yard setback from 3 meters to 0 meters for 2019 and 2021 Otter Close, which is strata lot 4 plan EP S5408, subject to the registration of a covenant on each of the new strata lots, limiting the density to 1 dwelling unit. And I'll just stop there, and then after you're done with that motion, go on to the next one.
Councillor Justice, I saw your hand come up first.
Yeah, I'm happy to move option 1, which I understand to be the approval of development variance permit covenant, but one that would ensure compliance with the OCP.
Sorry, you had a question as well?
No.
Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor Justice, seconded by Councillor Manhas. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Recommendation 2 is that council authorize issuance of development variance permit number 95 and grant a variance to section 56.6A of the zoning bylaw number 2950, 1997 by reducing the minimum side yard setbacks from 3 to 0 for 6467 and 6469 Marine Crescent, which is Strata Lot 13, Plan ESP 54080, subject to the registration of a covenant on each new strata lot limiting the density to one dwelling unit.
Seconded by Councillor Justice. Councillor Finley, any discussion? No discussion, all in favor? And opposed, motion carries. We now move on to item 10.4.
Mr. Mayor, item 10.4 has multiple parts to it, but it's dealing with parking restrictions and towing along Croft Street and Duncan Street. The purpose is to address recreational vehicles violating parking along Croft Street and Chemainus and on Duncan Street in the south end. First recommendation of staff is that council authorize the Director of Engineering to install signage at Croft Street in Chemainus between Mill Street and Alder Street that, one, restricts the parking of vehicles over 5,500 kilograms and trailers to no more than 2 hours, and two, advise the public that vehicles or trailers violating the parking restrictions will be towed and how to recover the vehicle or trailer. Recommendation number 2 is that council authorize the Director of Engineering to install signage at Duncan Street at the south end between University Way and James Street that, one, restricts parking of vehicles over 5,500 kilograms and trailers to no more than 2 hours, and two, advise the public that vehicles or trailers violating the parking restrictions will be towed and how to recover their vehicles. Recommendation 3 is that council authorize staff to enter into an agreement with at least one towing company and to set out the terms and conditions for the towing, impounding, and return and disposal of recreational vehicles. And 4, that council direct staff to direct staff to draft one towing bylaw to regulate the towing and storage of illegally or improperly parked vehicles and chattel, and 2, to an amendment to the fees and charges bylaw to include updated towing regulation charges.
Okay, let's start off by each recommendation. I saw Councillor Finley's hand come up first. Moving recommendation number 1. Oh, and seconded by Councillor Manas, but you want to speak to it? Councillor Toporowski?
Yeah, I was just gonna say before moving recommendation 1, it has 2 hours. I was wondering if we could change it to 3. Oh, longer? Yeah, up? Okay. Well, I'll ask what Chris Eustache. Well, the point was that when we have people coming in for summer, they're parking their RVs. They may go to the market, and I like to shop a long time and look at things, so I take longer in town. When they did this in Duncan and had a 3-hour window, it was kind of hard because you had to go to your car and then move it and then come back. So just for shopping pleasure and having an enjoyment of getting out and walking around and viewing our beautiful town. Thank you.
Councillor Eustache?
Thank you, Worship. So yeah, to follow up on that, I'd actually say 4 or even longer. There's actually an RV specific area that could have its own time. I walk this street every single day, and I've actually have emailed the municipality in the past on this subject and have spoke to the business owners, and through my time as the president of the BIA. It isn't daytime, even 8 hours isn't an issue. It's actually the vehicles that are there for a week at a time, and some vehicles for sale that had been left. Most recently, it was a for sale vehicle left that was sitting. So, and to follow up what Councillor Toporowski said, Chemainus is kind of unique, being that it gets 55,000 visitors a year, and those people typically spend the full day in there, and they're traveling in RVs. And you have a theater that many of those RV goers that can take 4 hours at a time if you take in the supper. So just a theater experience alone is 4 hours long. So maybe staff's thoughts on that. And the picture illustrated here, I think in the report, is that just an illustration? Because it also does miss the other RV parking zone closer to the mill, which is designated right now RV only, and as well the stuff just below the water wheel parking lot is RV only, which is separate from the other space that's more of a car restrictive. So that one could be 4, but the other 2 RV ones could possibly be 8. Really what the meat of this, though, is what I was happy to see was actually the ability to tow, because we have some campers that have just been left derelict with no one even in them for months on end now. So I don't know what the rest of council here thinks, but just as someone that lives there and involved with the business community and what those people are going. And then relative to that, I don't know if the rest of the council saw the email that came in today. It's one of those coincidences of timing. It was a Canadian couple traveling across Canada that just showed up and made a point of going into the Chemainus Visitor Center saying, we're actually one of the only communities that do this, and they made a point of wanting to make sure council knew how much they appreciated, because they could actually, with peace of mind, park and go amongst their things. So depending, I don't want to go against anything staff might say, but just for the RV specific spots, there's 2 of them, and this one photo only shows one of them, and the other area is a car parking area, which I'm fine with 4 or 2 on that. But the RV specific ones, I think, need to be between 4 and 8.
Great, thank you, Councillor Stash. I've got Councillor Justice and Councillor Manhas, but I know Mr. Swaby, you wanted to jump in.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to clarify that the 2 hours is a current bylaw requirement. So if council's interested in extending the hours, we'd probably need direction to go back, and we'd come back with amendments to those bylaws as well.
Just to respond to that quickly, and then I'll.
There's currently the signs there say 4 hours.
Mr. Swaby? I think Mr. Reitsma is here, can provide some clarity.
Yeah, so maybe just to help out here, the 4 hours applies to cars. This is very specific to RVs and trailers, and that's why the signage has a 5,500 kilogram gross vehicle weight stipulation, and trailers. So the language on the signs is exactly the same as the language in the bylaw. And so that signage is required to inform people of the limitations of the bylaw, like the stipulations in the bylaw, and then the tow away sign is required so that people know they could be towed and how to get their vehicle back. So this is.
But if council believes that we should have a longer time period, that's absolutely fine, and we can come back with amendments to that.
Okay, thank you. I'll go back, Councillor Justice and Councillor Manhas.
Thank you. My question was answered by that explanation from Mr. Reitsman and CAO Swaby. But I find the arguments that Councillor Stash and Councillor Toporowski have made compelling, and I would be in favor of a longer period of parking.
I got to go to Councillor Manhas, and I'll come back to you.
So if there's already a RV park there that has 8 hours already, why do we need separate for this? So like 8 hours for street parking here also. If there's sort of an RV park there, right, that has 8 hour parking.
You're asking a question, Councillor Stash.
Yes. Okay.
There's actually on the car at that Mr. Reisman spoke to, the car area says 4 hour parking but speaks to nothing RV, and then the RV parking areas actually just say RV parking. There's actually no signage at all. And so to that, the 2 hour I feel is too short, but actually what I just noticed in here, I wouldn't be supportive of excessive parking for so when it comes to 5,500 kilograms, actually there needs to be a actual clarity between commercial vehicles and RV vehicles, because I don't know if I'd want a commercial vehicle, someone in their work truck just sitting and parking and taking RV spots for 8 hours, when the intent to have that there is for RV. So I don't know if we need clarity between commercial vehicles, because typically commercial vehicles are set to the same requirements of most normal vehicles other than weight capacities.
I'm going to go to Mr. Swaby and then back to you, Councillor Manhas. Did you have anything to add to that, Mr. Swaby?
I don't. I think the reason it's at 2 hours probably is to capture both. So if you go longer, we'll have to think about, if you recommend that we go longer, we'll contemplate on how we address that.
Councillor Manhas?
Just going back to Councillor Stash's point, but there could also be somebody with a commercial vehicle that's on a day off, and just drove a commercial vehicle downtown and is shopping downtown or spending their time. So I think it's 5,500 kilograms, I think, is the way to go.
I think the spirit and intent of the bylaw is to address recreational vehicles. The weight is just, I think, I guess another way of describing the RV vehicle. But our experience right now is we're trying to manage the RV vehicles that are parking longer than it seems to be acceptable to the community.
So just for clarity, if council does decide to change the 2 hours to say 4 hours for recommendation 1 and 2, would we then therefore need a recommendation 5 to update the traffic bylaw?
We would return with a bylaw that updates, so we wouldn't be able to implement this until we amended the bylaw. And I think it's 2 bylaws. I think there's the highway and traffic's bylaw, so we'd have to look into that.
But would we need a separate motion for that, or does passing recommendation 1 and 2 with the 4 hours basically give staff direction to examine and bring back those additional bylaws?
Yes, I think that you would be returning this issue to staff and to return with the limitations being changed to 4 hours.
Right, thank you. Councillor Stash?
I'd support that recommendation if, in addition, I would prefer that we actually reach out to the Chemainus BIA and the Chemainus Chamber of Commerce, who deal with RVs on a daily basis. And in light, as I said, they just solicited an email from an RV user today. That won't add any time to the report, so I would just ask for their executive director's feedback. With the 4 is being it, is 4 hours sufficient, or should it be 8? Like, just I would like just to see their feedback.
That's not a problem, Mr. Mayor. Staff reacted very quickly, and I commend staff for putting this together quickly. We are having a tremendous amount of problems with parking, and I know council is receiving the emails, and so this was a really quick attempt to rectify the situation. But if you'd like us to slow down, and we'll certainly engage the community, by going back and amending the bylaw. No problem. The amendment will take some time. It'll probably take 2 months to get completed. It's going to take 3 readings at one meeting, and then off to the next meeting. So if we're not meeting in July, so this will take some time.
Yeah, all right. So just in terms of motion, could we, and I'll turn to our corporate officer, could we refer item 10.4 back to staff to make adjustments to the recommendations based on council's feedback? Is that sufficient?
I would pass a motion that council is interested in a 4-hour restriction.
Yeah, I did draft something.
Oh, all right.
That you could consider. So that council directs staff to amend the traffic bylaw to increase the parking limitation under sections 7.2 and 7.3 to 4 hours. So that could be your motion to make that change, and then when we bring the bylaw, we could bring the, the recommendations regarding the signage back when the bylaw is adopted.
So we would pass the motion you suggested, and then that comes back with all these other 4 recommendations.
So, no, you might want to still consider, get moving on recommendation number 3.
Yeah.
Regarding the towing.
And recommendation number 4.
And number 4. So
okay.
It's just 1 and 2. I would hold off until the bylaw.
All right. Okay, Councillor Finley and then Councillor Stash.
If we're changing the traffic bylaw to 4 hours of parking from 2 hours to 4 hours, that's community-wide, correct? Not just for this location in Chemainus or on Duncan Street?
My understanding, I'd need direction from council, was it was specific to these areas.
Councillor Calia.
I'm listening to the debate going on here, and I'm in agreement with Councillor Eustache. 48 hours makes sense to me, but in all reality, if we have a 4-hour limit, cannot the bylaw officer not give 8 hours? I mean, the thing for me is that I think the reason this motion has been brought forward, to council, is because there's the RV parking illegally on the streets, weeks on end. And I think we're losing sight of the fact that that's actually what we're here for, is to deal with the illegal parking which are on the streets, especially on Duncan Street, which is, a small area. And I've been down there just recently, and it's getting pretty ugly and messy down there right now. And I think that we need to deal with the fact that sooner than later, in my own opinion, with the problem that actually exists.
Councillor Calio. Councillor Manhas.
I actually support no more than 4 hours, because if somebody's parked there 8 hours, taking up somebody else's space that would want to hang out there or spend some time in the local area shopping and spending money, I think 8 hours is way too long. It's like 12 to 8, you can park your car at 12 o'clock at midnight and you camp out there until 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, some business in the Duncan Street area actually operate, their industrial areas, they start at 7 o'clock in the morning. I think 8 o'clock is way too long. 8 hours, sorry, I think should be 4 hours, and creates a turnover so others can also use that space.
Ms. Martineau, do you want to read out the suggested motion again on updating the traffic bylaw?
So that council directs staff to amend the traffic bylaw to increase the parking limitation under sections 7.2 and 7.3 to 4 hours. There is nothing in the highway use bylaw that speaks to parking limitations.
Does someone want to move that? Moved by Councilor Mannas. We have a seconder. Seconded by Councilor Finley. Councilor Stash.
To clarify, in the wording, can we not direct them to the two? They're huge signs already that say RV only parking. Can we not overcomplicate it and deal with just the RV parking spots? Because the other spaces say 4 hours, and we would just be adding towing to those areas. And we're still speaking only to recommendation 1, and I was speaking to James Street. So just the clarity on that. Like, I don't want to overcomplicate it. And I live here, I sit on these streets every single day, and those people do stay all day because they are spending money, they're traveling, they're cycling, they're going to the beach, they're kayaking, they're going to the theater. So that's why I want the recommendation of the chamber and the BIA, not just my opinion on that part of it. So is just that clarity, like, because the way that words is it's just this big blanket change. I mean, we'll get clarity when we see the actual bylaw, but I just want to ensure the intent.
Yeah, Mr. Swaby, do you want to comment on that?
I'm actually not sure what's being asked. The issue of enforcement, of course, is what does the bylaw say? And they're very, very litigious. They know our bylaws. And so I think you're asking just have leniency and allow everyone to be 4 hours. I think that's what you're asking for.
Well, for the RV parking and the signs that are put up, because if we put a 2-hour sign, those RVs have nowhere to park. Because then if there's actually literally nowhere to park in town and go to the theater.
But the right thing to do is not to put the signs up until we get the hours correct for council.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm.
But I think that's the intent of the motion.
Okay. And Your Worship, one last can of worms. Mr. Rietsma followed up and the other requests from the Chemainus Chamber of Commerce, and being the fact that we are going to be looking at the bylaw regards to parking, is that the time that we can actually address the electric vehicle parking that has people parking for 6 hours and taking up the charging stall at the Chemainus Museum? Is that the same time? If we're already going to be voting on the bylaw, can those be done at the same time? I don't want to overcomplicate it. We'll get rid of that.
I think that's a separate discussion. But
I just got kicked down the.
Well, I think it depends how much engagement council would like with the community on the EV parking. But certainly if we're amending the bylaw and council is united on what they want out of the EV parking, it may be new to the rest of council that there's not enough information. I just don't know. We can do it either way.
Yeah, it's just those that Chemainus Chamber of Commerce has emailed several times to staff on that. And actually they emailed council on it, if you recall, in the fall. I'm fine with putting it at a different date. I just wanted to take the opportunity and speak to it.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. It's moved and seconded. Can we call the question? All in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. So we'll put aside recommendations 1 and 2 and wait for the report on the updated traffic bylaw to come back. We can move ahead with recommendation 3, however. Does someone want to move it? Moved by Councillor Finley, seconded by Councillor Callio. Any discussion? Yeah. Councillor Manhouse.
It says one agreement with at least one towing company. Would that be put out to tender?
Mr. Swaby?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, just with regards to recommendation 3, it says at least one towing company we'd enter an agreement with, and Councillor Manhouse asked, would that go out to tender?
Yes, if we get more, that's even better.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, there being no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And now could we consider recommendation 4? Would someone like to move the staff recommendation? Moved by Councillor Manhas, second by Councillor Finley. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move on to item 10.5, the 2022 Statement of Financial Information. Over to you, Mr. Swaby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose, of course, is to present the 2022 Statement of Financial Information, and the recommendation is that council approve it. If there's any questions, we're certainly here to answer them.
Any questions for staff from council? Does someone want to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Callio, seconded by Councillor Manhas. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor? And opposed? Motion carries. We now move on to notices of motion. We have one notice of motion from Councillor Manhas, and as I was stating at public input, we won't be discussing this notice of motion today. Councillor Manhas is simply giving notice that he would like to debate this at the June 21st, 2023 regular council meeting. Yeah, I'll turn to Ms. Martineau.
It has been the practice that the councillor who's introducing the motion reads it out at this point, and then it's there's no discussion after that. It's just read out.
Oh, yeah, I'll leave it to you, Councillor Manhas. If you want to read the whereas or just the therefore,
No, just
whatever your
therefore,
preference.
just the therefore.
Yeah, perfect.
Now therefore, council directs staff to review what other communities are doing to protect their children and citizens from exposure to drug use in public places such as Campbell River, Nanaimo, and Kamloops. 2, engage whatever other agencies necessary to ensure that North Cowichan's children and citizens remain safe while using public places and free from exposure to drug use. And 3, draft a safe places bylaw restricting drug use in certain public places within North Cowichan's municipal boundaries.
Great, thank you, Councillor Manhas. We can now move on to question period, and I'll invite any members. Oh, of course, there was the one item under new business. Thank you, Councillor Manhas. I actually pulled the letter from Naru regarding landscaping along the railway between Beverly Street past James Street. And the request is the council directs staff to include the maintenance of landscaping along this area as part of the budget process. And I understand that staff have looked into this topic, and I'll turn to Mr. Swaby or Mr. Fark. Oh, Mr. Cater, who's looked into this topic.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I did look into this. The section is actually, from what I can tell, from First Avenue all the way to Beverly, and it's on the side of Canada Avenue. So there's sort of 2 boulevard areas in that railway. I did try to reach out to the person who wrote the letter just to clarify, but the best I can tell, it is on the Canada Avenue side. So that side there is where there is the Friendship Trail. So the Friendship Trail right now goes, it's about 500 meters through that part of town up towards, well, to the north and to the south. So that trail is actually maintained by the CVRD. So it's a gravel trail just off the road on Canada Avenue. So it makes sense. It seems how the CVRD is in that location, that if there was any maintenance on the trail, that might be something that they would take on. With that being said, we have not reached out to CVRD, and this individual has just got back to us as far as whether or not we could do it. So, pardon me. So I did look at it. I did determine that it's quite overgrown with a lot of bushes and bramble and broom, and have estimated the cost to remove all of that. It's about 7 meters wide by over 400 meters long. The cost to remove that and actually plant grass and put topsoil would be in the neighborhood of about $20,000. And the cost moving forward for North Cowichan, probably through a contractor to maintain that area, would be in the neighborhood of a couple $1,000s a year. So again, those are rough numbers. I haven't talked to contractors and done but in general terms, that would be the cost to be able to do that.
Great, thank you, Mr. Cater. Councillor Manhouse?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Cater, in the letter, it says ICF said they will allow to grow a lawn, but we already actually give tax exemptions to ICF. So shouldn't they be, shouldn't be their obligation to clean that place up around the rail bed?
I did call them, and I haven't heard back from them at this point. I think generally they would have a responsibility to clean it up and keep it maintained. But I think if you look along that whole corridor, it's the same on both sides. You know, right through town where it's fairly overgrown. The request, as I read it from the individual, was to plant grass, and it would obviously look a lot better, but it would be considerable amount of work.
Yeah, I just think it'd be the responsibility of ICF to maintain their property, as we do give them tax exemptions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Manhouse. Councillor Dobrowski?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Cater. I know Cowichan Tribes had the same issue down by the Black Bridge. They hired someone to come in and clean it up and sent ICF the bill.
Thanks, Councillor Dobrowski. Any further comments or questions from council? All right, I just say to council, Mr. Cater has shared with us what the cost would be for cleanup and maintenance, and it is because there are financial implications. We have already adopted our budget for the year. We wouldn't be in a position to take this on now, but if there is interest around the table, it's something we could consider as part of the budget deliberation process going into next year. All right, so moving on now, that concludes new business, and we can now move on to question period. So I'd invite any members of the public with any questions to step forward to the lectern. I just would stress that as the presiding member of the this meeting, my role as chair is to answer questions, any questions from the public. So yeah, please direct your questions to me as chair. Thank you.
Staff. I'm aware of one of the RVs that you're speaking about, and that gentleman has been fined multiple times, obviously can't afford it, and has asked if there is anywhere else for him to move. He's not been directed. So I'm just wondering, because we do care about homeless, and yes, it doesn't look great, I totally agree, but if there was something that could be put in that was, it's not a blanket kind of bylaw, that there may be one-step intervention before, if it was someone that was living in their trailer as opposed to just someone that came here. I'm just wondering if anyone's thought that through, that some of the people that you're talking about are actually desperately homeless and have asked many times, where do I go? So that's my thoughts on that, and like if you guys think there could be some way of not being so harsh. If that man's trailer is towed, he's on the streets in a tent. So I don't know if that's something you can consider anyway.
Thanks for the question, Ms. Richard. That is something that I think we struggle with as a council, trying to balance, strengthening enforcement, but also being compassionate and recognizing the situations that folks are in. And I think it's definitely the angle we're going to approach it with as this comes back to council.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. Just a really quick one. Earlier you mentioned that there was like a committee or like a group or something getting together later. Was that to discuss what to do like in like the Beverly York area? I don't know if I caught that correctly or not.
Yeah, council is planning a discussion at our next meeting to discuss how we want to approach these issues we're facing regarding homelessness and mental health and addictions and street disorder. And obviously that area around Lewis Street and York Road and Beverly is where we're seeing a lot of those issues, but there are other, challenging areas throughout the municipality as well.
Were there any like working groups available so like just community can kind of show up and just talk about some thoughts or anything like that?
Not for this particular meeting, but Yeah, there will be opportunities for discussion at council meetings, so through public input and question period, I think would be the best avenues for
Okay.
that. And obviously, we're always open to receiving correspondence from members of the public through email or hard copy letters.
Yeah. And that's just at the next council meeting?
Yeah, the intent is next council
Okay.
meeting, we're gonna be discussing collectively these issues and how we want to approach it. This has been definitely a major topic of discussion at council over the years. During the last term, we did adopt the community safety corridor plan with the city of Duncan. But as a new council being sworn in 8 months ago, obviously many of us are dealing with these issues on a daily basis. I mentioned in my mayor's report, this is probably the top issue I'm dealing with on a daily basis. Many others around council as well, but as a group, we haven't yet had a chance to sit down and really discuss what positions we're going to take as a municipality and what we're really going to advocate for or even use our own resources for. And the hope is that we're going to be able to determine that over the near future.
So one last little thing.
Yep.
Is that part of the motion that Tech brought forward, or is it separate? Is that two?
Separate, but as council discusses how we want to approach these issues, we will be, anticipate we are going to be touching on that topic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Councilman Ass and I have discussed that, and we'll see how things play out at the next meeting.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Joyce Benson, Drinkwater Road. On that same topic, in that discussion time, I do hope that I know a fair bit about what's happening, but anyway, with the city of Duncan and North Cowichan previously, and some of you are aware what's going on in Victoria right now with Topaz Park, okay, relocating the people somehow, somewhere. So that's my main question and concern, is that is addressed as whenever I ask bylaw officers, police officers, or security officers, when you move people along on the streets, do you tell them where they can go? And the answer always, and even phoning Peter DeVerti last summer about that, same answer. Macadam Park, Rotary Park, it's not safe, it's not okay, it doesn't work. So I'm just going to point out and ask the question that a place to go is going to need to be part of the solution finding. Where can they go? And somebody asked me the other day, is there any Crown land close by? Because they feel that somehow Crown land permits people to be set up. And I hadn't known that before, so I'll just throw that out there as well. So I said, probably towards Lake Cowichan. Just kidding.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds more like a statement than a question, but I appreciate what you're saying,
yeah,
and it's
the
an
question
important
is
point.
where? Where can they go? That's huge, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'll turn to see if there's any other questions from the gallery, and if not, I'll turn to IT staff and ask if there are participants with their hands raised.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there's one person with their hand raised, and I will unmute them at this time. Okay, call-in user, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hello, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's Kate Marsh calling from Chemainus. I had a couple of questions about the Sophie report. I know Young Anderson is the main lawyer for the municipality, and I know why Perlman Lindholm was hired, but I'm curious about, I'm trying to find it now, I'm scrolling back and forth, Bartlett and Company Law Corporation. I'm just curious why we would spend almost $200,000 with that. And then I have a second question about the GFL Environment Incorporated. What would we have been dumping there that we couldn't have dumped cheaper at Peerless Road or Bings?
Great, thanks for the questions. I'll turn to Mr. Swaby and Ms. Haldera.
Thank you for.
So just to be clear for whoever's going to answer, it's basically GFL and Bartlett and Company. I know about the other two, in a general way.
Great, thanks.
So most of our legal dealings are confidential, and so we do not disclose the topics that we deal with legal corporations on. As for GFL, I am I assume that GFL is the company that we use for doing our recycling. Am I right, Sean? I'm looking at Mr. Cater. I apologize. No? I do not have that information at my fingertips, but I can get it and report back to council.
Right. May I ask a clarifying question, Mr.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Yes.
So, maybe you can't do this, Ms. Soldera, and I understand, but I just wondered why there was quite a significant bill to another legal company when Young Anderson is the district's lawyer. But maybe you can't answer that.
No, I cannot speak to that.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right, with there being no further questions from the public, I'll declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you.